Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Alex Vines and I'm Director of the Africa Programme at Chatham House. And I'm delighted this evening here in London to be introducing James Duddridge MP, Minister for Africa at the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. First of all, welcome back to Chatham House, Minister as Minister. Before your appointment in late January, I was glad that you joined us for our exhibition and reception celebrating 100 years of Africa at Chatham House at Bonhams, the auction house here in London. As many of you know, 2020 is our Institute's centenary, so we were celebrating it. At that reception and exhibition, few of us at the time anticipated the impact of COVID-19 would have on us, and that we would, in just over a month, enter lockdown and go virtual. It seems like a lifetime ago, January this year. From my memory, Minister, this is your fourth speech to Chatham House's Africa programme, and we also appreciated you coming to the Nigeria All-Party Parliamentary Group visit to Nigeria in 2013 that we organised, led by Lizzie Donnelly. Today we have over 1,000 registered participants, truly global, and many from Africa, from Addis Ababa to Cape Town and from Dakar to Nairobi, as well as the United States, Asia, and obviously plenty of people from Europe and the United Kingdom. I would also like to recognise the high number of High Commissioners and Ambassadors and Chargés d'Affaires attending today, many of them accredited to the Court of St. James. Despite lockdown, I know you have remained engaged on the continent. Your choice of African ties has also made it into the British newspapers. The Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Malawi and Zambia are the visits I'm aware of over the last 6 months, but I'm sure I've missed one or two of the countries also. A lot else has happened since you took over the job in February beyond responding to COVID-19. The merger of DFID with the FCDO to create the now FCDO. Last week's statement of cuts from 0.7 to 0.5 of GNI towards international development. Democratic advances in Malawi and the Seychelles, but also a number of retreats such as Tanzania, conflict in Ethiopia, and a coup in Mali with UK peacekeepers heading out there now to Gao to deploy for UN duty. So plenty on your plate as Minister. To you, the audience, James Duddridge is the Minister for Africa at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. He was appointed as a Parliamentary Under Secretary of State in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Department for International Development in February 2020. He was elected Conservative MP for Rochford and Southend East in May 2005, and he's proudly told me how in each election his majority increases. Today's meeting is on Zoom and by Facebook Live. If you're on Facebook Live, my apologies, but you won't be able to ask questions today. If you're on Zoom, you are. We will have muted you, but you are able to use your raise hand function during Q&A. And if you'd like to ask a question, put your hand up and we may choose you to then ask your question live. We'll unmute you and invite you to ask your question. You may also submit questions through Q&A, through the Q&A box. So please do that if you want to, and we'll collate the questions that you're asking. We may also then invite you either to ask a question or we'll read it out. Final reminder that this is on the record, so you may use all the information that's presented in this meeting, but we will obviously be asking you as a speaker, if you're asking a question, to identify yourself. And finally, please don't film without prior permission from us, but you are very welcome to tweet this event using the hashtag #CHAfrica. So with no more ado, I want to hand over to the Minister to talk about UK's policy towards Africa and to welcome back at Chatham House. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you, Alex. Nearly made the obvious video conference mistake of speaking muted. Apologies. But it's good to be back for the fourth time. I understand every time I've come back, more people have come back, perhaps because I've been unclear the first time and they're coming back for clarification. I'd like to think it's because it's interesting and insightful, and I hope to give you a bit of a tour de force of the future of UK-Africa relations. I'm particularly pleased to do that at Chatham House. Chatham House is a fabulous organisation. I'm very proud to support them at any time, but particularly in their centenary year of 100 years. It's a particular privilege to come back. Thank you everyone for taking time out your very busy schedules to be at this webinar on the priorities for future UK-Africa relations. Clearly, I would have enjoyed meeting you all in person, but hopefully we will have as rich discussion as we would have had if we'd met around the table at the FCDO or indeed at Chatham House. Some of you will know me already. For those that don't, it is indeed the second time I have been appointed UK Minister for Africa after taking a short sabbatical under the Theresa May years. The continent also has been very much the focus of my overall political life in various roles, but also before my political career, I was a banker across the African continent, living and working in Eswatini, Botswana, and Cote d'Ivoire. So my affection for the continent runs deep. I will always be in the continent in some way, shape or form. And I know from living and working across Africa that there's plenty of evidence that African countries really are asserting their rightful place in the global order. Many countries have recognized that this is happening and have stepped up their engagement with African countries, regions, and Africa as a whole. And it's important also that the UK develops its relationship and has a modern relationship with African countries, ones which deliver mutual benefits and achieve shared goals. The Prime Minister has initiated the integrated review, which looks to set the UK's place in the world over the coming years, and work on that is advancing swiftly and will conclude in the new year. Already certain foundations are clear. As the Prime Minister set out in Parliament recently, the UK government is committed to safeguarding the UK's interests and values by strengthening our global influence. The UK will champion a rules-based international system that promotes open societies and open economies. We will forge new alliances across the globe as we look to maximise the benefits of leaving the European Union. We will act as a force for good in addressing all the problems of our age. The UK has a crucial role to play in partnering with African countries to achieve growth and security based around shared values, building the resilience to cope with the challenges we face, and enabling people to aspire to better, healthier lives. Many of you will have seen last week, the Foreign Secretary presented a new Overseas Development Assistance ODA strategy. This identifies 7 key areas. Firstly, climate change and biodiversity. Secondly, COVID and global health. Thirdly, girls' education. Fourthly, science, research and technology. Fifthly, open society and conflict resolution. Sixthly, humanitarian preparedness and response. And 7th, trade and economic development, which I care so much about. But ODA is, of course, only one part of our partnership with African countries. We are, HMG, committed to using all the tools at our disposal to achieve a greater impact. We've made a major change this year in the merger of the 2 departments and the ambition in creating the Commonwealth and Development Office. This department will pull together our diplomatic and development expertise to strengthen our influence and impact we can have internationally. And my trip to DRC last week showed how these 2 issues very much go together. For me personally, growth is the key. It's something I care passionately about, perhaps unsurprisingly, given my history as a banker and working in economic roles across the continent. Before COVID, we're seeing countries such as Ethiopia, Rwanda, Ghana, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire grow at more than 7% of GDP. 15 other African countries grew at levels above 5% per year. We want to do all we can to help get countries back on track and get back to those levels as quickly as possible. That's why we're helping governments and business to access affordable financing and advice, and to urgently establish safety nets to support some of the most vulnerable people. We're also working with UK businesses operating in Africa to help them and African governments protect vital supply chains and keep trade moving, including maintaining the supply of essential goods used to combat COVID-19. We're supporting a recovery that is as clean, inclusive, and resilient as possible. as reflected in the new African Union United Kingdom Green Recovery Action Plan. This includes a focus on renewable energy, the quality and impact of climate finance, supporting nature-based solutions and biodiversity, and adaptation and resilience in vital sectors such as agriculture. With the UK coast hosting the UK Climate Change Conference in 2021, COP, and an African country set to host it in 2022, we really have a unique opportunity over the next few years to work together to tackle climate change and safeguard the natural environment, but particularly in respect to the African continent. It's also worth noting the incredible biodiversity of the continent and the continent's increased importance, pivotal importance to the future of our planet in this regard. And I was reminded of that when I visited the Congo last week. In January, although indeed it seems a lot longer ago, we had the UK Africa Investment Summit in London. It offered an excellent opportunity to showcase trade and investment opportunities that many African countries offer, but also the role the UK can play as one of the world's leading financial centres. £6.5 billion in commercial deals were announced on that day, and we're following those through carefully. It's important also, though, that people share in the benefits of this increased growth. The best way to promote that is through our shared values about open societies, transparency, accountability, underpinned by greater freedoms of expression, freedoms of media, and robust civil societies. Open societies are the key. They stave off authoritarianism, limit corruption and political instability. They also provide a basis for protecting human rights. And human rights are an incredibly important value to the UK. We will hold to account those who violate or abuse human rights, including using sanctions in the most serious cases. We will support the strengthening of critical democratic, administrative, judicial, and security institutions. This will build accountability and really bring home the benefits of more open societies. Growth and open societies are especially important to enable the coming generations of Africans to fulfill their potential. 60% of people on the continent are under 25, and the population is set to double from 1.3 to 2.5 billion in the next 30 years. These people must be able to access education, services, and the jobs that they need. Healthcare, including ending preventable deaths of mothers and newborn, education, especially for girls, sexual and reproductive health and rights, all work together to create healthy, educated, and crucially, productive populations. Tragically, COVID-19 has reversed much of the progress made in recent years in these areas and has impacted the life chances of millions. An estimated 262 million children in Africa were out of school due to COVID in April 2020, and many, especially girls, will not return. The UK is putting investments in people in the heart of its approach to Africa. Earlier this month, the FCDO partnered with the African Union's Special Envoy on Youth to hear directly from young people in Africa about how COVID-19 has affected their life chances. And we'll work with people and development partners to develop a response that helps young people realise their potential. Now, all these ambitions are dependent on global security to protect people in the UK and in African countries from the threats we all face. Sadly, the threat from extremism across the continent is well documented, and there have been harrowing accounts last month of atrocities in Mozambique, and it only goes to demonstrate the dangers of new fronts opening up. The UK has been at the forefront of supporting a collective international response in Somalia and has made considerable progress in reducing the threat posed by al-Shabaab and other extremists, threats not only to Somalia, but to the region and also UK interests. In Mali, 250 troops in the Light Dragoons and the Royal Anglian Regiment will deploy this month to help international peacekeeping efforts there. And terrorism isn't the only challenge we face. We have piracy threatening maritime security, organised criminals trafficking drugs and people, crucially, across African countries to the United Kingdom. Illicit finance and technological advancements mean that a new array of cyber and other crimes can be used against Africans and against British citizens in Africa. We need to work together to tackle these threats, building the capability of African armies and law enforcement to manage them. Because without the security, we will not see African countries or Africans achieve the future to which they rightly aspire. So when I took on the role, I had a framework of what I wanted to achieve, and it boiled down to 4 words: grow, share, protect, enable. And this is a framework I've used in my initial meetings around Africa and in the UK. Grow is the economic piece. We need to grow GDP, but with a fast growing population, we need to be very careful. We need to grow GDP per capita, not just in absolute terms. We also need to recognize that the rest of the world is growing faster in terms of GDP per capita growth than Africa is growing, and that is unacceptable. Africa can't remain in the bottom billion forever. So we must increase GDP per capita faster than GDP per capita in the rest of the world. That growth needs to be shared, hence the word share, more equitably across Africa. Protect, traditional aid, humanitarian aid, conflict prevention are absolutely critical in stabilizing the situation where we see the benefits of growth and functioning economies. And we need to reset our relationship with African governments and institutions to enable us to help them with their priorities. All of this provides a useful basis for a hugely productive relationship between the UK and African countries, and good points for discussion and working together. I want to also be smarter about the choices we make, about where and with whom we choose to work. I want us to focus where we can have a sustained impact, ensure we're getting the best for Africa and the best for the British people and every country, and the best possible returns for UK taxpayers' money. When African governments put in place the right policy frameworks and show the necessary political will to deliver, the UK will be on hand to assist where we believe we can make an impact. In practical terms, that means supporting the transitional authorities in Sudan on their priorities for peace, economic stabilization, democracy, providing 3.2 million people with $5 a month for 6 months to help cope with the implementation reforms. It means supporting the government in Angola in a bid to receive stolen money. It means supporting the new Malawian government, where I visited a month or so ago, by providing an additional £11 million in assistance to law enforcement agencies to tackle corruption and promote integrity in public services. It means that we'll work together with our African partners more and more to protect our freedoms and interests and stand up for our values. That means supporting governments that are promoting transparency. That means supporting governments that are promoting accountability. That means supporting governments that are promoting human rights. That means supporting those in civil society that are demanding greater accountability, those who are demanding greater transparency, those that are demanding their human rights, those that are demanding democracy. To ensure we're directing our resources as efficiently as possible, we need to make sure we're using the best of our knowledge and expertise, and that's of everyone in this country. That means using the knowledge of the newly created Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, of course, but also people from outside government, from businesses, from academia, from the British people as well, who understand African countries better than many of us, our Africa diaspora communities here in the United Kingdom. There are so many different diverse elements to the relationship between the UK and African countries beyond that which I've highlighted. We have scientific collaboration, tech startups. I'm looking forward to African Fashion Week in London. Burna Boy evidently is at the top of the UK charts. BBC Africa, bit closer to my home, we have 50 African players in the Premier League, something that opens up Africa to a new generation. And we have 30,000 African students studying here in the UK, who hopefully will go on to be strong partners of the UK-Africa relationship. So the relationship with African countries are already rich, but I believe genuinely that the future offers a much more eclectic, fantastic array of opportunities to make that relationship even more productive for all sides. I thank you all for your passion for the continent. Thank you for listening to me. I certainly welcome questions, and I will welcome working with you over the coming years on all sorts of interesting projects in Africa. It's such a worthwhile and rewarding continent in which to work, whether you are a diplomat, a member of the diaspora, a politician, a business, or indeed a student. So I encourage you all in your endeavours. Thank you, Chatham House.
Minister, thank you very much for your presentation, and we have good and respectable time for having a conversation now. I'm going to take questions in threes, and I see already a number of hands coming up, so I'll go to the hands first and then I'll do the Q&A. The first one is Linda Scott, who I believe is High Commissioner of Namibia to the United Kingdom. Linda, we're unmuting you. Please ask your question.
Good evening, Minister. Good evening, Alex. Thank you so much, Minister, for giving us some of your time. And I want to thank you particularly as you represent the UK, and thanks to the UK for upping your numbers of your High Commission in Namibia. We're really grateful for that. I just wanted to say that just to bring to your attention that we have just launched on the 31st of October, the International Centre for Women, Peace and Security in Namibia. And that is, as you know, a very important issue for Namibia and for the UK. And I would just love to hear your thoughts, Minister, please, on how you would see us working together to ensure that there are more women at the negotiation tables. In Africa, we are working to silence the guns. And so I do believe very strongly, as I know we all do, that women need to be at the negotiation tables, and that will make a big difference to making these agreements long-lasting. Then I just wanted to say that we also, Namibia is an upper middle income country, and you talked about the challenges of COVID-19. Well, Namibia has, like the UK, given out a lot of money to keep people's bodies and souls together. And I was just hoping that we could have the support of the UK for countries that are upper middle income, which don't have easy access to cheaper grants. We don't have easy access to money which will allow us to buy vaccines, although Namibia is one of the countries that has already put in its order for millions of dollars. But the point is that we do need support. We are also deeply affected economically, and so debt is a threat to us. And then finally, I wanted to just bring to your attention, Minister, that there was the African-UK summit, and Namibia and quite a few other countries were excluded from that summit, which was most unfortunate. And we really hope that at the next summit, which will come up, that everybody will be invited, or that there would be some kind of explanation or some kind of decision, maybe a regional representation rather than a pick and choose, which left a rather bitter taste in the mouth. So thank you once again, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. I've got another neighbouring High Commissioner to Chatham House that wants to ask a question. So Julius Moto of Uganda. Julius, nice to see you. We're unmuting you. Please ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much, Minister James Duddridge and Alex. Hi.
Please go ahead, Julius. High Commissioner.
I want to thank you for organizing this online session. Yeah, the population of Africa is very big, about 1.2 billion people. And the majority of that population are young people. Now, moving forward, This can either be a boom or it can be a bomb. We should look at proactive programs that train and retool African young people on trade skills that they can apply in their country to build their own country, and trade skills that they can sell or offer anywhere in the world. This is the only way we are going to go. While governments should continue investing in infrastructure like railroads, seaports, telecommunications, the internet, these infrastructures will remain less useful unless the young people are tooled and on trade skills that put money in their pocket. This is the way we have to redesign our programs to cater for the current youth and also provide for their future children. I thank you.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. And finally, we have, we'll take one more diplomatic question, and then I'll cluster the ambassadors and high commissioners in this first round. So the ambassador of Ethiopia, Meles Teferi Desta. Ambassador.
Good evening, Minister and Alex. Thank you for organizing this briefing and a timely explanation on priorities for our future relations with UK by the Minister. I have two questions. The first one is, we recognize and appreciate UK's initiative to host the UK-Africa Investment Summit last January. However, the lack of concrete outcomes from the summit is concerning. Considering the commitments announced and the UK's message of global Britain throughout the event, what follow-up has been made so far to meet these commitments? And my next question is, we have been following with great concern the merger of the FCDO and DFID, and now UK government's cut to its foreign aid budget. These decisions will undoubtedly negatively affect our countries. As you know, from COVID-19 to desert locust and other challenges, this is a critical time for strengthened international cooperation rather than withdrawal. What we expect from UK government is a more proactive response and support. UK is one of the most dependable partners to most of our countries, and we have been able to implement particularly important development projects through DFID technical assistance and generous foreign aid from the UK. How does your government plan to fill this gap? Thank you. Thank
you very much. Minister, you have 3 questions there from High Commissioners and Ambassadors.
Thank you. I'll take them in order. So, Linda, it would be good to get back to Windhoek and see the Centre for Women, Peace and Security. Women are central to strong community relations, central in conflict situations. Last week in DRC, I saw female soldiers being deployed alongside male soldiers, and that made them much more accessible within communities. So it's about people that we use and the values we project out. I've seen that as well in South Sudan. We particularly are supporting programs that support trained female mediators in conflict situations, and very much support the African Union's work on silencing the guns and trying to do that going forward beyond the focus of that particular campaign. It was an important commitment to put more people in post in Namibia than when I last came out. I think that's welcome. It's not just about money and number of people, it's about quality, but equally, as the world becomes more complicated, having greater degrees, greater numbers, but also specialists in post, I think is really helpful. In relation to upper middle income countries, clearly the main way we can help is through economic growth. I think the simplicity of having upper middle income countries that sit alongside developing countries is a little odd. One, sometimes the growth is regional and places like South Africa and Namibia are examples of that, where there can be contagion of success from upper and middle income countries of less developed countries or developing countries elsewhere in Southern Africa. Mention was made of the vaccines as well in terms of money. So the UK has contributed 250 million to support the Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness, CEPI, and also through Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, 330 million a year, which is going to protect up to 75 million children. But both CEPI and Gavi will provide a backbone for the COVID vaccinations, both logistically and financially. Obviously, the news today that we've got something that is licensed and can go live is critical. It's a good first start. There's other candidates that hopefully very quickly will come out, but we must protect everyone, both because that's the right thing to do, but also it's the right thing in terms of protecting everyone. Until we're all protected from this virus, none of us are properly protected. So it will be a slower process than we want. With the vaccine announced, everyone wants it next week. That just is logistically possible, even in our small country, let alone the globe. But it's a good first start. Look forward to other vaccine candidates coming forward, particularly ones that are going to be more easily to distribute, given the refrigerator needs across the African continent. I was very worried when COVID broke out that we would be even worse affected on the continent than we have been. On the African Investment Summit, I recognise that there was a limited cast list at the last Africa Investment Summit. I think we should have a wider cast list. I also think it's slightly odd that we don't offer places to include other people globally in these type of investment conferences and work globally as well as just bilaterally between country and continent. Julius talked of population growth, boom or bomb. I think last time I was in role, virtually every sentence on population said, on one side, there's a great opportunity, rising middle class. This is a group of people we can sell to trade to, that will be able to manufacture goods. It's a good news story. But on the other side, there's a capacity issue with population. I think on balance, people seeing the population growing at doubling every 27 years, 26 years. It is going to be very tricky to do the GDP growth per capita faster than the global average with a population expanding so quickly. No other continent has managed to grow population and GDP that fast. So unless something is done around that, it will be a challenge for the continent over the coming years. And girls' education is part of that solution, allowing people to take family choices, getting the right health systems in place so people don't feel they need to have 6 or 7 children to support them in the future, and getting government stepping in as well as families in terms of providing that security in the way that we do here in the UK has all got to be longer term part of the solution. On the African Investment Summit, well, £6.5 billion in anybody's money isn't a lot of money. I thought it was very successful. We didn't get the follow through on it that we would have done if there wasn't COVID, but a lot of the projects are already delivering. And it was, in many ways, an African summit and an African Investment Summit at the same way. Some countries have separated out the two. But I thought it was a very good conference and a starting point. We're not going to be able to do something of the same size a year in, but I think we should in some way mark the occasion, and that will be an opportunity to say, what of those deals have we delivered on? What do we still need to do? What opportunities were on the table that we should pick up again?
Thank you, Minister. So let's get another round of questions. I'm going to take 3 that are of hands up, and the round after that, I'll respond to the Q&A. So the first one is Laurie Lee. So Laurie, if we're unmuting you, please ask your question.
Hi, Minister. Laurie Lee from Care International. You talked about having a modern relationship with Africa. And we certainly know that as you know, Africa grows economically, that governments are keen to have a lot more say over the development strategies in their countries. And there's also quite rightly a big conversation going on in the world at the moment about how we, as it were, decolonize aid and make sure that the countries themselves have a much greater say over how aid is used in their countries. At the same time, politically, it can be difficult for governments in the UK perhaps to relinquish a great deal of control over how aid is spent. And how do you see that balance working out in the future?
Thank you very much, Laurie. The next question will be Jalal Abdel-Latif from Addis Ababa. Jalal, we're unmuting you. Please ask your question.
Thanks, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very clearly, Jalal. Nice to see you.
Very good. Okay, I just have very brief 3 questions. One, I just like to thank Chatham House and Alex and organize this event, and I'd like to thank the minister in making this presentation. One is the issue of what you call debt relief in Africa. Because of the pandemic, because of a lot of economic and political situation, so a lot of African countries are in a debt trap. What is clearly the UK's government, what you call the Conservative Party position on advancing, on advocating in basically on debt relief, basically whether it's Paris Club or through other means. That's one. Second, I just read in Economist and also heard from the BBC that the UK government is going to reduce its global aid or cut down the financial aid to globally. If this is singled out, to what extent this will be affecting the African portion of this? Is it like, your government is going to cut down so much on giving aid to Africa or not? And the last one is on the transition. We're having serious conflict and transitional problem in Africa. Now, actually, as of this year, a lot of countries are going to war or conflict, and transitions are like a lot of elections. What is the position of the Conservative Party or the ruling party in the UK in terms of like, what is the position on managing this transition over?
Thank you very much, Jalal. And just to remind everybody, Jalal is from Addis Ababa, but he's working for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And I have a third question, which I'm looking for. So let me invite Edward Clay to ask a question, please. So Ed Clay, who's a former British High Commissioner to Kenya, I think. Ed Clay.
Good evening, Minister. Thank you for your presentation. You spoke about the open societies part of the programme. Could you give us some examples of what concrete actions have been taken to make a reality of this, and with what results, what successes, what lessons perhaps have been learned? Thank you.
I'm sorry, Edward, I missed the substance bit. Concrete actions on
the Open Societies Initiative to promote open and democratic governance across the continent. Thank you.
There you go, Minister. 3 questions.
That's great. So first, Laurie, congratulations on the best T-shirt promoting organisation. I thought that was fantastic to see the branding of care. In terms of the spend, I think we always need to remember that this is British taxpayers' money. It's not, our money. It's not money that people have donated and hypothecated for a specific charity. So we have a great duty of care over over that. So we do want to work in partnership with countries, but we do need to have accountability for that. So working through NGOs helps in that, rather than working through governments in some countries. And that gives us permission to continue giving large amounts of money, and we will still continue giving large amounts of money. But we also need to talk to countries about how they transition out of aid over the years, and how we then should be focusing on other countries and bringing them up. And that involves early dialogue at all levels, and ultimately replaces a dialogue between donor and governments, which is somewhat artificial, with governments and electorates. So there's a connection, as there is in the UK, between the election and how different parties will spend those monies. I thank Jalal for his question. The UN economic team in Addis is fantastic. And I had a very good meeting with Vera Songway when I was in Addis a month or so ago. Very good points around debt relief. We supported the debt suspension. I know that the AU through Cyril Ramaphosa and through Vera Songway and through a number of other intermediaries have been asking for more. I think we need to be acknowledge the fact that that COVID has not been a crisis in one place. We've all been hit. We will look again and work with international partners. In my time in office, we've particularly helped Somalia move through a debt restructuring. It could very well be that the same needs to happen in Sudan. We've got some very real problems in some countries. We've seen Zambia going into debt default and kind of forcing the situation of assistance, as well as trying to be more strategic through using the international financial intermediaries and the African Development Bank, which I'm looking forward to working with much more. In terms of 0.5, which I didn't avoid from the last questions, forgive me, I'll speak in a little bit more detail on 0.5. None of us wanted to cut the aid budget from 0.7 to 0.5. COVID has been incredibly impactful on the British economy. It is the worst impact on the economy for 300 years. And conscious that already our aid budget was based on GNI, thus was reduced. But I can assure everyone here that that is a temporary phenomena. We want to get back to 0.7%. We're still spending 10 billion pounds. That will make us still one of the most generous G7 donors. Proportionately, we'll be spending more than the US, Japan, Canada, and Italy. Now you will hear more of this, and it's going to be very difficult for those programs that have to be altered, for those programs that thought they might be getting more money and won't. And there'll be a bit of political point scoring, which is normal for us politicians. But I would gently remind you that in the 1974 Labour manifesto was a commitment to 0.7%. They never in any single year managed that. We did. We are still committed to it longer term, but in these COVID hours, we simply cannot afford to do that. And I think if we tried to do so, it would have damaged our permission to do development and permission to continue to take significant sums of money from British taxpayers and distribute it for good purpose overseas. So we do remain committed, but it allows us to reset what we do, where we do it, and how we build back better and do smarter things with smaller sums of money. And also, DFID was fantastic at innovation. Where perhaps we could do more is taking some of that innovation and internationalizing it, using our seats on the board of the World Bank, of the Africa Development Bank, of the International financial intermediaries to take some of that skill set and leverage it up with other people's money as well. So despite the problems of COVID, I'm optimistic, particularly today on Vaccine D-Day. Ed, sorry, Ed on open societies.
Okay.
I got carried away finishing that question. It's so much harder to measure this as a metric. We try to, but there are more democratic elections. There are fewer civil wars. There's better legislation in countries. You know, take gay rights, which is still pretty appalling across the continent. But there's discussion. It's on the table. There is movement. There is progression. It's not fast enough. On media freedoms, there's some really good examples of where it's going well, but also we're calling people out where it's not going well. And so it's difficult to get the precise metrics I think you're looking for. I do have concerns, particularly around elections on the continent, and I think it's not good enough to just, you know, binary say, yes, there's been an election, good, tick, or no, there hasn't been an election, bad. We need to get a way of rating and saying this election hasn't been perfect. Part of it was very imperfect, but it's slightly better than the election 4 years ago in country X, or slightly worse. And I think if that's what matters, the trajectory on open societies, that they're getting more open bit by bit, rather than demanding that everybody reaches the same level as us immediately. And for example, on gay rights, I'm quite often reminded by African countries, it's our legislation that we gave them that we're now wanting to change. So, you know, we're all on a pathway of progress.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to read out clusters of questions that we've received for you to try and move forward. So one cluster is a number of questions on the reduction of GDP percentage commitments to overseas aid from Mustafa Karoma, Gwyneth Boswell and Neil Carmichael. They're asking, is this a move from aid to trade? And William Knight has added, will the shareholding of the African Development Bank remain the same? So that's one cluster. We also have a question from the High Commissioner of Kenya. He's asking, so that's Manoa Ispisu, he's asking, it is a year after the January summit, so he's referring to the UK Africa Investment Summit. Does the UK plan an event after a year after event? So it's a question, you know, will there be another summit, basically, another UK Africa Investment Summit? And is there anything also that you, Minister, can ask about planning for COP26? So kind of the Africa dynamic, I suppose, of COP26, he'd be very interested. And then the final cluster is Liz May asks, the UK is negotiating bilateral trade deals with a number of countries that are part of regional customs unions, Kenya, Ghana to name two. As liberalization commitments kick in, this undermines their common external tariffs. How can the UK better organize trade with Africa so we really support regional and continental integration? There are three clusters of questions for you.
Excellent. So the reduction in budget is temporary. There's not a shift of conditionality between aid and trade in the British interest, but it is in the continent's interest to improve trade. And actually, I think there are massive development benefits for developing quite aggressively intra-Africa trade. And the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is central to that. But a lot of the benefits of that are end-loaded. So be working closely with the new Secretariat around that and providing support to that, as we have done traditionally locally on something like the Trademark East Africa, so assisting between borders. In relation to the Africa Development Bank, I know my officials had extensive meetings with Adesina only this week. I'm answering questions in the Commons in 2 weeks on the African Development Bank. I've not got anything to say specifically on that. I don't want to piecemeal by going through program and organisation by organisation, but I would say I think it's one of the more effective spends. The UK influence is heavily leveraged, and the closer we can stick to regional and continental organisations, the better. Because having worked in Abidjan when it was there before it nipped to Tunisia and back, and saw that very clear work it did across the continent, that kind of African expertise, but operating outside their own countries was absolutely critical. In terms of the AIS, are we going to do a big conference in January? Well, I think it will be impossible to do something of the same size. Longer term, do we want to do conferences like that? I think it's a good model, and we should, but we should also mix it up and do things on the continent as well as in London. Everyone doesn't have to come to London to discuss our relationship. We can do it on the continent. And I think also some of the side events at AIS were incredibly good and can be done independently. And I'm a great fan of AFSIC, which is in May. So in some areas, the private sector is doing a good job, and we need to be careful we don't try to replicate something that's already working well, and instead we support that. In terms of conferences and just kind of trade conferences, I'm always happy to do pre-records and get involved and promote trade overall, both trade as a force for good, but also trade in UK national interest. In terms of COP and preparations, it is very rare for me to have a single meeting, and certainly never would I have a visit without addressing some of the issues in terms of COP, the nationally determined contributions, what we can do, particularly around issues like solar and power. But what I'm finding is, rather than discussing an acronym and a conference, I'm trying to discuss with senior partners, so presidents and foreign ministers, around what it means for them and their country, rather than trying to define the environment as an environmental issue, with me from FCDO going and speaking to environmental ministers. I think these issues need to be owned right at the top of governments across Africa, and, because it's Africa that's going to be worst affected by some of these things. In terms of trade and trade deals, so colleagues at DIT lead on this issue. I work very closely with them. It's a complex situation as we move from region to region and country to country. Clearly, doing more deals with blocks is easier for the United Kingdom. It's not always possible for a number of reasons, particularly where you have a mix of lower and middle income countries, and also some of the trade interests are quite concentrated in countries, for example, like Kenya. I went to Marks and Spencer's, if you'll forgive the advert, a few weeks ago, because the Kenyan minister I was speaking to had visited a plant that very morning that was packaging up fruit and veg. And in Southend, I came away with, I think, 6 or 7 different vegetables, all packaged up, that have been packaged in Kenya, that contributed to that economy. And it would have been devastating had we not signed a trade deal with them. We initialed something, I think, either later this week or maybe even next week in Kenya. The full deal will be signed and will need parliamentary approval. But it's important to African countries to get this deal, these deals in place, arguably more important than it is even to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Minister. We have one last round of questions. So I'm going to take some verbal questions, and I'll read a couple of Q&A ones also. So the first person I want to invite to ask their question is Mahesh Kotecha. So we're going to unmute you, Mahesh, and please introduce yourself, because I must admit I don't know who you are.
Thank you very much.
We cannot hear you, Mahesh.
Okay. Let me see.
You're very, very silent. I'm going to move on to the next person. If you want to ask your question, put it in the Q&A because we're very short of time. So Matilda Obasaki.
Hello.
Please,
Hi.
Matilda, ask your question. Yeah,
Hi,
very clear. Go on.
Okay. So we're talking about African development. So we can't really forget the young adults. So talking about young adults again, you know, they're kind of the future of, you know, Africans tomorrow, and also not forgetting the female child. I know the UK has invested a lot through the aids to empower the female child in Africa, and also to empower the young adults in Africa. So my question is, what plans are really there in place to make sure that these aids follow to they follow to the letter? So the projects they said they were going to deliver, to make sure they deliver them, but because again the empowerment of female empowerment is a big issue in Africa, and also the young adults as well. And so I know there are a lot of aids being put out there to equip to develop Africa, but again to be fair, a lot of it is not happening. So the question is, what strategies are in place to make sure that the aids giving out are actually doing the job? Because again, I do run a platform, an online platform, talking with these people in Africa. So the empowering the female gender is a big issue, and I don't want to go into details now. I think the question is, what plans are put in place to make sure those aids are be followed to the letter? Those projects.
Great, Matilda.
Thank you
very much. That's the first question. I've got a second question. Lala Sumia Muhamidi, if you could, we'll unmute you and ask your question. Thank you, Lala. Please introduce yourself.
Unmute. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Duddridge, and thank you to Chatham House for organizing this very important and timely meeting. I have two questions. The first one is when talking about, following the meeting that we had UK Africa Summit, we have talked about a lot of steps, a lot of things to do between Africa and the UK. The problem is that how to make this partnership and how to raise it to a more practical and strategic ones. And in this, we need to coordinate. In the UK, the department should be taking steps and measures to ease and to facilitate this trade investment between the two countries. And by these measures, I mean things like procedural and changing or working on the laws, on the rules for investment and trade. And I mean by this some issues that the African countries are facing for the moment, like visas to be given to businessmen, to officials to come to the UK. So I think in order to make this partnership really fruitful, really practical, and we can see it on the ground, we have to work on the issues around it and to make it practical. And my second question is about the level of engagement and cooperation between the FCDO and between your own department, sir, with the representative of the African countries in London. And I mean by this, like the African group, because I think this cooperation and this being close to listen to these countries will make the cooperation more fruitful and make the issues that are pending more kind of listened. Thank you very much.
Lala, can you just introduce yourself, your role
at the
my name
Moroccan
is Lala
Embassy? Hamidi. I'm the Deputy Ambassador of Morocco.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I have a few clusters of questions that I'm going to read out to you, Minister. One is many people asking specific questions about human rights crises in the continent at the moment. Are there examples that the Minister can reflect on where the UK is having a constructive role in mediation or good offices? Some people were asking about NSARS in Nigeria, obviously Cameroon, what's happening in northern Mozambique. David Richards also asks about what the priorities, and Pata Mbele is asking about what role does the African diaspora groups in the UK have? How can they engage with your department on framing Africa policy? And there's so many questions. I'll take one final question here, which is Claire Turner asked, China is dramatically increasing the number of university scholarships available to African scholars, with over 2,000 scholarships available just to Ghana each year. In comparison, the UK government funds around 10 Chevening scholarships for Ghanaians. What are the plans for increasing scholarships to the United Kingdom or using higher education? Thank you, Minister. Those are the last questions.
Fabulous. I'll try to cover all of those. I don't know whether it was bad, the line. I missed some of the bits you said, Alex, when you were reading out the questions. So I think I got most of them. In relation to Matilda and young adults and females, the centre of our plan around this is quality girls' education, 12 years of quality girls' education, because women stabilise communities much better than men. Educated women, particularly women that have been educated well through primary years, take better decisions around and are enabled to take better decisions around their own fertility, aligned with that, providing contraception and meeting that contraception demand. And part of the girls' education is providing, the basics like toilets, so people don't need to go to the loo in the bush, which lacks dignity, but also puts the young girls at risk of being raped or abused, and also focusing on the issue of FGM, where even in countries where it is illegal, is still heavily practiced. Nala talked about partnerships. I think partnerships mean different things in different countries. So in some countries we have very formal partnerships, bilateral relationships where there are meetings between ministers every couple of years, and you literally line up 6 and 6 and review progress over those years, and that can work well. I've seen that in South Africa working well. There are other relationships where they're more informal. They can work equally as well, or relationships off the back of a change. So having gone to Malawi and met the president following the election and committed greater support to him, we've agreed to have regular review points on the whole range of subjects to take that forward and do that in a structured way. So one size doesn't fit all. On visas, that's something I discuss extensively with my Home Office colleagues. I know the All Party Africa group as well hold the Home Office to account. But whilst it is not perfect, processing times and numbers are going in a positive trajectory. But no doubt this is something that need to look at. On human rights, human rights is sometimes a difficult one to demonstrate what we're doing. So there's a lot that happens beneath the bonnet. I'm able to be much franker with my opposite numbers in private, and then have something slightly more measured that goes out as a public statement. I think it does no good to be finger wagging and just telling other people to behave. That's just not I think a productive way to operate. But on Human Rights Day, perhaps you'll hear a little bit more about how we are looking at human rights going forward as an independent nation state. There are other opportunities. Like many people, the SARS, the background to SARS and the actual protest on Lekki Bridge and the destruction of property after was quite horrific. I've spoken extensively to federal government relations in relation to that, but also the Lagos governor, and we will continue to do that. And I know there's inquiries going forward, and it's touched a nerve both in the diaspora community and in the country, and has a massive impact. On diaspora and in the attitude to diaspora, I think the diaspora provide a brilliant window, an insightful window that even some experts that don't have those close connections, but the people that don't have those close connections can never really scratch the surface, and the knowledge on the ground of why something might not be happening or why something's happening is quite often through the diaspora, as well as people that have travelled, worked, lived across the country. On China, we are not going to be able to out-China China. We are never going to give more money to China. We do it for different reasons. I don't think anyone here would promote using the development budget to build football stadiums, as much as we may or may not like football. So we need to do more with less. Quite often, African partners are wanting to diversify away from just the big lenders, but also working in consortium. I think through other different countries coming together with different companies in consortium to help Africa provide a better deal. We're not going to get to the level of scholarships of China, but you bet the Ghanaians would prefer to come to Oxford and Cambridge and Essex. I'm sure there are some very good universities in China. I can't name one of them. So whilst they're in a smaller number, I think they're of immense quality, and we are increasing the number of Chevening scholars and have done so recently. I think I've covered off all the points I could.
Minister, I know you have to go. There was just the one question on the Commonwealth. How does Africa fit into UK Commonwealth policy?
I mean, Commonwealth is massively important. I chaired the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association just before preparing for this meeting. I was with Tarek talking about CHOGM in Rwanda, which is really interesting given they're sharing the Francophonie and the Commonwealth. But we have a massive bond, and we won't necessarily call it the Commonwealth. We just say, we have a history, we have a shared language, we have a shared legal system, we have close connections. That is what the Commonwealth is. I think it is confusing because, Eswatini and India we don't have the same relationship, but there are more similarities, and particularly on the continent. And the fact that more and more people are wanting to join the Commonwealth or ask about it, but also it provides a hook to discuss human rights. That's not the type of thing we do in Commonwealth countries, both in talking frankly to entrants, but also existing players. And it provides another way of holding countries to account internationally within the Commonwealth, as well as the near neighbours and more distant institutions like the UN. So I am a great fan of the Commonwealth.
And on that note, Minister, I want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. I know you need to go straight away to another meeting. So thank you for spending the time. We'll certainly invite you back to Chatham House. You're going to get a T-shirt soon with all the times you've been at us. Yeah? And please, to the audience from around the world, and particularly our friends and colleagues in Africa, keep safe. And if we don't see you this year, we hope to see you physically in 2021. Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening.